So my name is Holly Hadac. I'm a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. I'm licensed by the state of Michigan, by the DNR, to possess wildlife that's orphaned, injured, sick, in whatever kind of need. And I was also with the Southeastern Michigan Coyote Research Project. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about demeanor of coyotes, personal experience I've had with them, working with researchers and so forth. But first of all, Canis latrans is a scientific name for coyotes, and it means barking dog. But the Indians respected the coyote so much they called him God's dog. So I started with a coyote knowledge quiz. A lot of this stuff is based off of research and misunderstandings by people. But what is a normal weight of a coyote? It's A, 25 to 45 pounds. And coyote attacks on humans are common. That's false. There was one child killed in Southern California in the 80s by a coyote. The parents were intentionally feeding the coyotes, which is not a good idea. And then they left I believe it was a 3-year-old outside with a chicken leg in its hand, unattended. And when the coyote came in for the chicken leg and the baby cried, the coyote attacked. And coyotes, are they an endangered species? That's false. And the reason I have the first question and the third question is that there was a study of students at a college in New York State, and most of them thought that coyotes were over 100 pounds and that they were endangered. So what is the average number of coyotes in a pack? A, 2 to 4. The pack is in quotes because researchers don't call them packs officially because they don't form packs like wolves do. They're called family units, but we just use that as slang as the family unit. And coyotes are aggressive, timid, or somewhere in between. Most people pick somewhere in between, but I'm going to show you how they are actually timid animals. And people need to ask themselves, when you hear all these comments about coyotes being aggressive, is why would this wild animal act different than any other wild animal? Their first choice is to run from you. Okay, Mark Twain said the coyote is so spiritless and cowardly that even when his exposed teeth are pretending a threat, the rest of his face is apologizing for it. And this gentleman wrote, they're opportunists, entrepreneurs, and survivors. They are true Americans. So this is Dr. Numi Mitchell. She has, I believe it's 10 packs of coyotes radio-collared on Rhode Island. You probably thought nobody could ever do that to a coyote. She uses a foothold snare trap, which is what we use. I'll explain more about that later. And she walks up to them like we did, and we just put a net over them, and they fall over. And she'll anesthetize them, put a collar on them, weigh them, and so forth. But my point here is to show you how this coyote is not fighting at all, and I'll show you that in some of the pictures of our group. And then this is, let me go back to Dr. Mitchell. She had like really expensive GPS collars that store the coyote's location, and she goes out in the field every 8 days and downloads all the information. She found out that the coyotes were going to a certain door, and it was a door of her friend who gave her the funding for the project. And it turned out that the neighbors were feeding the coyotes and intentionally bringing them to the homes. So they talked to the neighbor, and within 2 days the coyote didn't come around there anymore, because everything they do is about the food, everything. When that coyote learned there wasn't food there anymore, that coyote wasn't there anymore. So Dr. Way just has the cheaper equipment like we had, where you go out constantly every day in the field and find the coyote, and I'll show you a little more about that. But this is one of Dr. Way's coyotes. He actually caught her twice, which is unusual. But you can see this is not an aggressive posture. This looks like your dog laying in front of a fireplace. And this shed is on Cape Cod, and you can see the back right corner, there's a den there. He had gotten a permit to have a captive coyote study. So they saw this den, some early arrival before all the people came in for the summer, saw it, and they dug up the den, and there were 9 puppies, which is huge. They took 5 and left 4, and the whole time the mother was 50 feet away in the bushes barking at them. They're digging up her babies and taking her babies, and she never made an aggressive move. They had somebody watching her. They weren't sure how this was going to go. So this coyote is from Alaska. Rick McAvinci is a biologist in Ortonville, and at one time he was working in Kenai National Wildlife Refuge, where his partner here and Rick used to anesthetize wolves by helicopter, And they also had traps on the ground. And whenever they get a coyote in a trap, they would radio collar, because that was the purpose of the study. They would radio collar the wolves, so they just radio collar the coyotes. But my point here is that the girl wanted to shoot the gun to anesthetize a coyote, and I've used those before. They're powerful, they're loud. That was the only way they knew how to handle wolves. You don't need that with a coyote, but they didn't know that. And the coyote fell over, and Rick thought, oh, that's unusual. The anesthesia doesn't take effect that quickly, but whatever. So they went up and they started processing this coyote, and then Rick looked up and saw the dart in the dirt. She'd missed him from 30 feet away. So the coyote was letting them handle him. So they hurried up and anesthetized him and finished their radio collaring. This was one of 3 coyotes I had. They were all puppies when I got them, and they all came from different places. One was on someone's porch in Detroit, and kids were throwing rocks at it. Another one was from Howell Nature Center. But my point in this slide is that this coyote was hiding for me. This is release day, and I'm going to put them in a crate and take them somewhere for release. I probably could have let them go where I live, but I didn't know much about coyotes and people and their interactions at that time. But I had to they kept hiding, so I had to take everything out of the pen. And then I put a big crate in there, and I just walked around the pen, and sooner or later one of them would run into the crate and I'd shut the door. What the news media wants you to believe is that when I step in that pen, the coyote's going to tear me apart. This is an injured adult I had a few years ago. You can see the back right leg where he's got a mark from his injury. He was hanging from a fence. Come daylight, people saw him. He had hopped a fence and was hanging there. So animal control got them. I'd just done this talk for animal control, Oakland County Animal Control. So I got the coyote. I only had him for 6 days. They heal real fast. I walked in his pen. I put out food and water, and I put medicine in his food. And 6 days later, I shoot him back in his crate and took him back home and released him. It was January, breeding season is that time. He has an important spot to fill in the pack hierarchy. So he had to go back home. A couple months later, I had an injured muskrat. And every time I walked in that injured muskrat's pen, he tried to bite me. I had to walk around with a board in front of me so he couldn't bite me. They have nasty attitudes. But this coyote, he wasn't happy that I was there, but he just laid there and let me do my work. And these are puppies I had. You can see the black stripe down the backs. It's hard to tell when they're younger whether they're red fox, gray fox, or coyotes, but that black stripe will give it away every time. And they're about 4 weeks old there. They never heard my voice. Nothing good comes from a wild animal being habituated to people. I would play coyote sounds to them, and even though they were so little, they knew what those sounds were. They really alerted to them. And then they got to go in an outside pen. You can see there's still the black stripe down the back. I think that's about 5 weeks old. Again, they never heard my voice. I never said anything to them. I would put them out during the day. Yes, they're nocturnal, but I wasn't leaving them out in a pen at night by themselves. So I put them out during the day, bring them back in at night, and that's the only time I would touch them is when I had to get them in a crate. So when we first settled this country, you can see on the left that green area is where coyotes were. They were mainly a Western Plains animal. We cut down the trees, we drove the wolves out, they followed the trail of dead horses and other animals out west. So now you can see how in the orange area that they're all over our continent here. There was a coyote spot at the Panama Canal maybe 8 years ago, and I haven't been able to find anything whether they actually did cross the Panama Canal, but I wouldn't doubt that they did get into South America. And I kind of think this is a neat picture to show. Now, a coyote chases a trespasser to its territory border. We'll talk about that a little later, but a wolf will chase a trespasser down and kill it. These folks in Yellowstone have spent thousands and thousands of hours observing coyotes just for one thing that they're observing it for, and they got this picture too, that coyote's running for its life. Okay, just so if you see prints around, you can tell dog versus coyote prints. They're more straightforward, the toes aren't spread out, and you can normally see the 2 middle toes. These are adult and puppy prints that I took this picture in Rochester Hills when we were tracking, radio collaring, and there's that picture just looks like the drawing that I just showed you of a coyote print. So we have 3 types of coyotes. The resident is part of a pack that's easier to radio collar and track them because they stay home. We have had dispersers. We think one of our coyotes was up in the Little Finger of Michigan. We did a talk for animal control officers up there, and somebody up there saw a radio collared coyote. Now we think we're outdoor people, but those people are much more outdoor people than we are. And we had tracking equipment with us, so we turned it on our drive home, didn't pick anybody up. All the collars have different frequencies. But you'd have to go out on a 4-wheel drive or a truck way out into their boondocks so that we could really find this coyote. And because the signal is good for about a mile. I've heard them 3 miles away before. It's mostly about a mile. So you can see the average size pack in Massachusetts and Chicago. And then the dispersers are looking for their own territory and a mate. I'm going to show you one of our guys that we had. My son was tracking with me one night and we saw him and he thought this guy was 50 pounds, but I'd weighed him a month before and he was 35 pounds. It was September, fall, the fur is fluffed out more, it's thicker, heavier, and he looked a lot bigger. So, but you can see the home range that they may have. Dr. Way in Massachusetts found one of his coyotes 250 miles away, and like I said, we think we have one up by the Little Finger, but we didn't go check. So, but a little bit about their natural behavior. Opportunists, you throw garbage out, they're going to eat it. A lot of people have compost piles. They're eating out of your compost piles. Some people don't care, some people don't want it. Invariably, when I get a call from Ann Arbor area about a coyote, they have compost piles, because I say that and then I hear, oh, my neighbor's got one. Okay, so we analyze their scat. I'm going to show that a little bit, and you can see the type of things that they eat. They hunt singly or in pairs. They don't hunt in packs. And they hunt with badgers. There was a video a few years ago, I think it was also in Yellowstone, where a coyote and a badger were together, and the badger went into the den and the coyote went and got the occupants that came out the other way. So a little bit about their society. They mate for life and they're monogamous. Researchers have tested DNA testing on puppies and they all come back to the same parents. Only the alphas breed. There's something I'm going to show you at the end here that's a bunch of misinformation that talks about how every coyote breeds. Crepuscular there means they hunt at dawn and dusk. And as I said, they have a highly structured pack hierarchy. So you can see when the juveniles leave, and they only use dens for birthing. They are nervous animals around dens. They don't use them except when the puppies are there. Once the puppies leave, they don't go back to the den. They use the same ones year after year. So here's coyote poop. It's looks like mostly hair, and I'll show you a little bit more about that. You'll get an in-depth look at coyote poop later. And you can see how the ends are pointed. Dog poop ends are blunt, but coyotes are twisted and pointed on the end. So this is a coyote den. They're normally about a foot and a half, 2 feet wide, smaller than fox den. Fox urinate at the opening to their den. It smells kind of skunkish. So you'll know that. And then up here, about 100 feet north of this den was, the first den was this den. So, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute.
You've worked hard. You've earned a life that you can call your own. Retirement worries shouldn't get in the way. But many Americans like you are finding that retiring on a fixed income is harder than they expected. Fortunately, there are benefits programs that can help. Visit benefitscheckup.org to see if you're among the millions of people eligible for thousands of dollars in benefits to help you age well, so you can focus on what's really important. Benefits Checkup. You've earned this.
Hi, welcome back. We're going to learn more information about coyotes here, a little bit about death and disease in them. You can see how high the mortality rate is, which is true of any wildlife out here. If that wasn't the case, we'd have critters all over the place, and we don't. And in the Chicago study, I mentioned that Dr. Stan Garrett has been studying coyotes in Chicago for, I think, 20 years or so, and a lot of that information came from him. But the problem we have out here is mange. It's rampant in foxes, and it has spread over into some coyotes. And I mentioned distemper. That's rampant in raccoons, and that has spread over into some foxes and coyotes. I get calls from the public, so I know what's going on out there. But we don't have any raccoon rabies in Michigan. What we have is distemper, and the symptoms are the same. So I want to throw that in there too. All in all, they're pretty healthy animals. But this young lady was hit by a car, and this is what mange does. You can see the scrapes all over from when she was hit by a car, and that was in Orion Township. This is a young juvenile. It was in October, so she was born that spring. Their puppies are born the end of March, the beginning of April, and that's written in stone. They only have one estrus a year, and that's when these babies are born. So let me say a little bit about the Southeastern Michigan Coyote Research Project. This was a PhD study out of Wayne State for Bill Dodge. He did get his PhD from this. And what we did was trap coyotes in this area, radio collared, and track them. This is not an updated map. There's a lot more information that goes on there, but I just wanted you to see the general area that we worked in. And some of the areas where we did radio collar coyotes, we got 2 in Rochester Hills, and River Rouge. If you're ever looking for a coyote poop, it's all over the place on that corridor right there where all the cement is. When Bill was hanging around the Ford World headquarters in Dearborn, we did trap a coyote there. He took that picture in summer of '09, right down in Dearborn. So, okay, this is Lance. This is the first coyote we got. The poor guy, it took us an hour to process him, and then we got to where it took like 15-20 minutes. This was in Rochester Hills. It turned out that he was a juvenile and he left home, and we were able to track him. So I walked over and put a net over him, and he fell over. They never bark, they never struggle, they never try to bite. They are so petrified by such a closeness with humans, they don't know what to do. So we always put a towel over their heads. Any wild animal is calmer when it can't see what's going on. And I had anesthetize him here. We worked with a vet, and we're just waiting for him to fall asleep. And then we put the radio collar on. You can see that we have the trap on still because we didn't know what to expect. But after that, we took the trap off as soon as they were out because they're out, they're not going anywhere. Their eyes were always moving though. They've always got some sort of conscience about them. So we use footholds, which are offset footholds. They have a gap in them, and the gap is lined with rubber. So it doesn't hurt them. Dr. Mitchell in Rhode Island buries them where she just gets a couple of toes. Their feet are really soft and squishy. I always like to play with them. They don't have retractable claws like our cats do, but they're really soft and squishy, so they didn't hurt them. We wore rubber gloves because we didn't want to leave our scent on them. They went through enough as it is to have this contact with people, and you can see in the corner that he's able to breathe through that towel, around that towel. And then we put him back in the crate. I gave him a reversal medicine. On the left there is one of Bill's students. Was a biology teacher at Wayne State, and Bill's on the right, and I'm in the middle there. So we put him back in the crate, gave him the reversal medicine, and waited for him to recover. You can see the yellow ear tag. We put ear tags in them, and Bill saved that little piece of flesh in case we ever wanted to do DNA analysis on them, but to my knowledge, he never did. Now you can see the plastic that's over a little bit of the antenna. That's to your right. And the antenna extends beyond that, but that was not a good picture. The puppies typically would chew the rest of that antenna off, so we'd end up with a little stub. But okay, and then you can see the crate's open. And every time I opened the door, and they didn't leave. They didn't know what to do. They were just so petrified by this close contact with humans, they didn't know what to do. So I found a piece of re-rod, and I poked at him, and he took off. And then they stay in one place for 2 or 3 days, scared us every time we thought we heard them, and because they just were so baffled by what happened. And then they started moving, and we were able to track them. So you can see the tracking equipment we use there. Nick, his student, has got the antenna like Dr. Way had, and the computer hanging around his neck that recorded all of that. You can see on the map to the right where the coyote's located, where the red is, and we would go to different areas and take compass readings, and when they crossed, we knew that's where we had them. Sometimes we had to go to 5 or 6 different places to get them to cross. When they're moving, it wasn't real easy to keep up with that. So this was Lance's territory. As you can see, it's 16 square miles, which is huge. He had a 30 square mile home range. But you're going to have to wait for some more information because we're going to take a break. Welcome back. Now I get to tell you a little bit more about their territory. This is in Orion Township. On the north end, the east-west road is Clarkson Road. The east road is Joslyn. That's the dog park in Oakland County, and that's where Lance hung out. That was his territory. And there are times there's certain protocol and research about how many times you find them during the day. Once a week we go out during the day and find them. And he was sleeping in that row of bushes on the north side while everybody's dogs were running around. And I wanted to go, hey everybody, we're proving the media wrong. They're not going to come out and take your Jack Russell. So these rural coyotes have a lot larger territory. The urban-suburban coyotes between 3 and 10 square miles, but as we found out here, and to my knowledge, we're the only ones that ever did a research study in a rural area, and we are the only ones in the Lower Peninsula that did a research study. So he had this territory of 16 square miles. Now a little bit to the left of that territory his, which will be on the west side of Baldwin, he started to spend a little more time over there, and I tracked him all the time. He was kind of like my project. And when it came to that time for him to have puppies, end of March, beginning of April, I didn't find him in the Oakland County Park anymore. I found him on the west side of that, on the west side of Baldwin. 4 in the morning, you wouldn't believe how much traffic's going down Baldwin. I would try to hear the puppies howl, and it was so neat hearing them howl, especially when a siren goes off or trains go by. They always start howling then. But it was hard to hear how many voices because of all the traffic, even at 4 in the morning. But you'd be surprised. There's videos you can watch on YouTube that show, I think it's 3 or 4 coyotes howling. It sounds like there's 10 or 12. So his area encompassed the dog park. And a friend of mine lives right up against the dog park. And about the time I didn't find Lance in the dog park anymore, this friend said he saw 2 coyotes together. They were not radio collared in the dog park. So my thought is he spent too much time, this is his first litter, outside of the dog park when the litter was born, and they didn't maintain his territory, so he didn't go back there. And I think he moved outside the dog park because there are dogs there, and he didn't want his puppies near dogs. They're dogs, they don't want that competition. So on Cape Cod, you can see how tightly controlled the area, the pack territory is. This was from Dr. Way's study. They patrol their borders nightly and they don't let trespassers in. So there was a while after Lance moved that we lost him. Now, I should say, people say they don't name their research subjects. Well, they do. But he had a certain number, and it was a number on the transmitter on his collar. That's what's on all the paperwork. But we named them after the people that got us permission to trap in that area. So a guy came into a business near the Palace, and at 59 and 24, and he saw a coyote with a radio collar on, and he notified the DNR, and they got with us because we had DNR permits and advisors there too. And so we went out and put out a trail camera to get pictures of them. We had 2 trail cameras that were stolen, but this is on private property. That was, a lot of it was fenced from the front, especially where the road is, and it had good security there. So we got this picture of him. You can see the radio collar on him. And then we got this picture. And I thought that's either a territorial challenge by another male or it's his mate. And then we got this picture of the two of them together, and you can see Lance is on the right side with the radio collar on. We got lots of cool trail pictures. So this is Carly. You see all the smokestacks in the background and the steam and all that? That's U.S. Steel down in Ecorse. Behind her is a railroad track that runs along that area, services a lot of U.S. Steel. We got permission from DTE, this is their property. Now here we used a snare. You can see how she flattened all the area down around the snare, and you can see just to the right, kind of in the middle of her body, the snare hanging down. A coyote will choke itself on a snare because they'll just panic, so we put little stoppers on them. So she couldn't choke herself to death, but she couldn't get out either. We got 2 coyotes that day. She had to wait. So I put a net over and she fell over. And Bill just puts his hands on them so that they know they can't move, and then we anesthetize them, radio collar them, weigh them. And this is the area, that red star is where she was trapped. That's DTE property, and that area to the right is U.S. Steel in Ecorse, right on the river. Okay, this is Svent. This is in Rochester Hills. There was an older gentleman that walked his German Shepherd named Svent that we'd meet in the morning, and we'd talk to him, and so we named him after his dog. But you can see the mesh that he's laying on. We had 4 hooks, and we would put him on a weight, and once we had him anesthetized. And then we put him in the crate. He didn't want to leave either. So I took the top off. We ended up taking the top off every time. So, and then they look back at us like, what am I supposed to do now? His feet aren't even touching the ground. He can't wait to get out of there. But see the betadine in that one corner of the crate? When we took those little ear sections out, we sprayed it quite a bit with betadine because we didn't want to have any infections going on. And this is Ted. He was our first coyote. This is Bill, he wanted to study the movement of female coyotes around the den, which we found out there isn't a lot. They stay a lot with the puppies. The males, they stay in the den for 3 weeks and the males bring food to them. And he didn't radio collar Ted, and I said, you're going to regret this, and he did, because we kept getting the males. I think Carly was our only female. But you can see a lot of the equipment there, the betadine, the hole punch for the ear part. Put the net over him, and he just stayed there. See his head up the top right corner? It was like freeze frame. They don't move. They're just like, they're petrified, like a possum playing dead. And this is Eljo. We got him at E.L. Johnson Nature Center. He has mange. That's why his coat is not very filled out. And mange is a mite that burrows under the skin and bites, and their hair falls out. And they can't see as easy to hunt at night, so because their eyes start to swell shut because their skin's sloughing off. And it has an odor all of its own. So I took him home, and I had him, I think it was for just 3 weeks, and gave him some medicine for the mange and fattened him up, and we took him back home and let him go there. And I felt sorry for him. They're such social animals, and he was by himself for 3 weeks, not knowing what was going on. So we got a coyote Brit, and this is where the cross is in the middle. That's Pontiac Waterford area. The northwest road is Dixie Highway, and what's paralleling it is a railroad track. And the one that's squiggling going north is Telegraph, and in the lower right corner you can see Oakland County Complex. And those are all the areas, those little yellow dots are all the areas where we got him, all the tracking that we did with him. Well, that's it for this week, and you're going to have to come back next week to find out all about coyote poop.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shelley Flace with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. If you've put off doctor visits during the pandemic, now is a good time to call your pediatrician and get caught up. Children and teens need regular checkups with their doctor to make sure their development is on track, to talk about nutrition and behavior, and to get the vaccines they need to stay healthy. It's safe and your pediatrician wants to hear from you. For more on children's health during COVID-19, talk with your pediatrician or visit healthychildren.org.
Every 2 minutes, a woman in the U.S. is diagnosed with breast cancer. And that's why when others look away, we lean in. We're fighting alongside patients because we know one moment can change everything. With your help, more moments of hope are possible. Join our fight. Save lives.